The Doc is In is sponsored by Amada Senior Care.
We are ecstatic to have Chief Medical Contributor Dr. Ryan Stanton back in studio with us this morning.
Today we're focusing on some of the most common breaks and fractures and how to avoid them.
Yeah, so great, and I appreciate that.
Yes.
It's great to be back. But here's your little bit of education. Justin's been doing a little bit of education. One of the biggest questions I always get, a break and a fracture are the same thing. That's an interchangeable term. One is more the medical term, one is just the more common term. So when I have an x-ray that says, well, you don't have a fracture, they say, well, is it broken? Well, it's the same thing. So there you go. And we're talking about the most common type of fractures or breaks today based on age group. So let's dive right in. So what are the most common types of fractures? Well, it's really determined by your age, your activity, and things that are going on. So let's talk about pediatrics. Our pediatric patients, they're active, they're running around, they're playing. So our most common things are going to be fall related. Most often the wrist, because as they fall, they reach out with their arms, try to brace themselves. Elbow is also a victim of this as well. And one of the most common, especially in young sports, is going to be the clavicle or the collarbone. Now, once we start to get older, especially in our 20s, 30s, and early 40s, we're really transitioning more to trauma. We're not doing as many sports, so it's really more about trauma, motor vehicle collisions, things like that. So trauma is going to be number one, so those types of fractures. Our ankle, a big one as well, with falls or twisting the ankle, and again, still is going to be the wrist because of falls with the outstretched hand. Unfortunately, though, as we age, get more calendars behind us, the bones start to thin out. Women earlier than men just because of menopause, but men will have the thinning as well. And our ability to protect ourselves during falls is hindered as well. So we don't typically protect ourselves with our arms out to reach when we fall. So tend to have more fractures. Most common is going to be the hip. See this one all the time, especially among elderly. The pelvis, just because of the hips. If the hip doesn't take it, the pelvis is going to take it and likely have a fracture there. The humerus, or the upper part of the arm up near the shoulder. And then honestly, everything else, especially with age, you're going to start getting the spine-related fractures, just almost anything that you could potentially have just because of the thinning of the bone, inability to protect ourselves, and the more difficulty with getting around the ataxia or difficulty with balance. So there's a lot of different things, but the risk is definitely different based on your age group.
Everything else, it's so daunting.
And everything else. Well, I started to make the list, and then I was like, well, Connor's not going to be able to put this on a slide, so we're just going to put everything else.
We talked about the thinning of the bone. I mean, are there things we can do now to thicken the bone to where we're not as susceptible to everything else, Doc?
Well, it's the osteoporosis or osteopenia, it's that thinning of the bones. A lot of it's going to be associated with your wellness, your overall exercise, your fitness. So the more muscle, especially those stabilizing muscles, are going to help with your balance, decrease that risk of falls. Also, a good, well-rounded diet is going to be key. We want to make sure that we're getting all of those nutrients in, and then working with your doctor. Certain people may need some supplementation in terms of hormone supplementation to help protect those bones or to help solidify or stabilize osteoporosis or osteopenia. So especially if you have a family history of significant thinning, you need to get that checked out and work with your doctor closely to try to decrease that risk. But unfortunately, I guess every day you're a little bit older than the day before, and I guess that's better than the alternative, but at the same time, that's going to increase risk.
We're supposed to just drink our milk, right?
No, that could be a topic for next time.
He did that already.
I thought milk was supposed to make our bones strong.
That was a great ad campaign. I mean, it's the calcium is helpful, but at the same time, we can maybe talk about the milk and where we stand with that on a future segment.
And last thing, if I'm out of money, am I fractured or broke?
Oh, dad jokes, jokes. We're going to have to cut to break. I'm going to send this to break right now.
You're watching Fox 56 News. Our home, your news.